folks, welcome to another sacred geometry video. Today we're going to have a look at the seed of life and the flower of life, and so this is probably the most popular and the most recognizable design in sacred geometry. It's been used by ancient cultures for thousands of years, and you find examples of it all over the world, all over the globe, and you find it in nature. It's quite a beautiful thing, really. It's interesting. It can describe the creation of the universe, and it's similar to the Big Bang in a sense. It also can describe the 7 days of creation that you might find in Genesis. And it can also be used in the most practical sense of constructing all sorts of geometric shapes and calculations and ratios. It's quite a beautiful thing, but let's get into it. And it starts with what we call the singularity, just one point in the middle of nothing, and this singularity is what we would call the very first consciousness after God, I would imagine, because God would have created this consciousness, and this is how our universe began. Consciousness couldn't really do anything because it was just surrounded by nothing. It existed on its own. Consciousness decided, well, is that enough? You'll find that in the ancient Egyptian creation stories, this would, in some myth, be described as Atum, sometimes described as the god Ptah. I tend to prefer the Ptah stories only simply because Ptah is the god of Memphis, which is the first city that we know of in ancient Egypt, the very ancient capital. So consciousness decided, well, what can I do here? I can't move. I need somewhere to go. Well, I need to do something. So it decided to create a parameter around itself which it could move within. And basically it did that by, when we describe it in a two-dimensional view here, it's using a circle. So there's the very first parameter. Now consciousness was sort of content to move around within this border. It had a space, but it had nothing else. And it wasn't really satisfied, so I thought, well, maybe I can replicate this again to give myself more room and create something else to observe, and then that would create more consciousness that could observe the universe. So it went to the boundary, and it did it again. It drew itself a bit more space. In doing this, what it inadvertently created was the Vesica Piscis, and that's this almond shape within the middle here, and that's quite a beautiful shape. It contains all sorts of ratios and mathematical constants, and it can be used in practical terms. We can use it if we were to, for example, to have started with a construction line across the centre. We could have used it to draw an equilateral triangle or lots of other different shapes. Anyway, let's move on. So let's not forget this original circle here, because that's the point where we need to where these circles dissect or cross, we need to continue. Now we need 6 more circles to create the seed of life. So let's get on with that. Now, don't lose track of that original circle, because you'll end up with some other strange design and it will not be the seed of life, and you won't be able to continue on to draw the flower of life. Remember that, keep your track on that circle. It's quite easy to place your compass on the wrong center point. And try and be as accurate as you can, because what happens, there's going to be 19 circles in the end of this, and then these cross points don't meet very well, and then the end product is a little bit messy. And I'm going to attempt to do this, quite quickly for you. So, alright, what we have here is the seed of life. It's quite cute. A little flower petal in the middle. This can also describe the egg of life. Although the egg of life has 8 spheres to it, we're looking at this as 2-dimensional. And the egg of life, we need to consider that these aren't just circles, these are spheres. So then the egg of life, if we flipped it on its side like this, we would see probably 1, 2, 3, and a little bit of those 2 circles on its side, but we would see another sphere beneath the original. So that would make up the 8th sphere. And the reason for that is because it resembles the human cell that replicates itself, and it becomes, there's a point where it has 8 sections to it, and it resembles this beautifully. That's one of the connections. Let's move on to a bit further now onto the flower of life. So we use these exterior points and we draw another 6 circles. Now I have to be as accurate as I can here. I've really moved on here to drawing the complete form of the, rather I should have sort of taken you through and just drawn 6 circles at a time, but that's not what I did, I'm sorry, but nevertheless. I think one more down here, let me see, where is it? Okay, now we have 19 circles. So that's not complete, because what you'll find, if you ever see another drawing of the flower of life, it's got 2 circles around it. Now what the ancient wisdom holders decided was that any further knowledge beyond this was too sacred, so they kept the knowledge locked up within this boundary. They added another boundary just to make it even more secure, and I'll show you why we know that there's more information beyond this point here. Now this is going to be tricky, this is where it gets tricky. Let's just mark all of these points, because can get confusing even for me. So what we need to do is take that same original radius and get these points here, and we draw an arc only from that inner circle on the boundary. Now, to anyone that's fairly astute that would have seen this design, might have asked, well, we've got 19 complete circles on the inside. What are these extra arcs that are contained within? What's going on there? Why aren't they full circles? Well, the reason is, what it tells us is that there is further knowledge beyond the parameters, but you'll have to do a lot more training and a lot more understanding before you're allowed to find out what's beyond the information that's beyond this. But that's the clue. These arcs are the clue that something, that there's further knowledge beyond. I think I've got one more. Well, there we have it, that's complete. So I guess I can't really say too much about this at this point, but yeah, well, I can. Within this, we can join certain points within these circles. We can construct the platonic solids, 5 of those, out of this design. And it's quite a beautiful thing to look at besides that. But we're going to take that to another video because the platonic solids are a little bit more complicated and I probably have to do just one at a time. But I hope you enjoyed that, learning how to draw the flower of life.